I am Travis. I greet you in love and light of the infinite creator. I communicate now. What are the teachings of the law of one? Who is Ra? What impact does it all have on humanity? Come on, let's access the law of one. Welcome to episode 5 of Accessing the Akashic Records, the philosophical teachings of the law of one. Now I'm going to go into a bit of scientific stuff as well, a bit of cosmology and things like that. So the philosophical teachings pretty much is good enough coverage of what I'm covering for a title. So first we must learn about the source of the information. So who is Ra? And why are they giving us this information? Well, from what we know from Ra themselves, Ra is a sixth density social memory complex who is a member of the Confederation of Planets in service of the infinite creator. So a sixth density entity is an entire civilization that has unified and become an expanded overall consciousness. So Ra is an entire civilization from Venus that completed third density approximately 2.6 billion years ago. So if you watch my previous video on densities and dimensions, you'll be able to follow exactly what I'm talking about here. If not, please watch each video. They're in a specific order, building upon concepts, so I don't have to keep rehashing every episode. And Ra says, we are one of the members of the Confederation of Planets in the service of the infinite creator. There are approximately 53 civilizations comprising approximately 500 planetary consciousness complexes in this confederation. Now this confederation contains those from our own planet who have attained dimensions beyond your third density. It contains planetary entities within your solar system and contains planetary entities from other galaxies. So it is a true confederation in that its members are not alike, but allied in service according to the law of one. So Ra had a member of its soul group who was known to humanity as Ra in ancient Egypt, hence the name. So hence the name Ra, but as they are telepathic at their level of evolution, names are just simply used for our predisposition. So it has the name Ra based on a human entity that incarnated that's part of the soul group of Ra. So it's just the most well-known name within their soul group. So that's why they use it for our predisposition and having an attachment to naming one another for individuality's sake. So it's more for our sake, not for Ra trying to glorify itself for this entity that existed in ancient Egypt. Okay. The law of one. So what does the term law of one mean? Well, Ra states the law of one though beyond the limitations of name, as you call vibratory sound complexes. So that's just the way we verbalize information, may be approximated by stating that all things are one, that there is no polarity, no right or wrong, no disharmony, but only identity. All is one, and that one is love, light, love, the infinite creator. So everything is everyone, is the infinite creator. It's individualized form of the infinite creator. And all paths, no matter how negative, all lead back to the infinite creator. So specifically that happens in mid-6th density, and I explained that in my previous video, and that leads us into the choice. So we have the choice in every situation to choose love or unity, or fear and separation. So, or as Ra says, to be of service to others or service to self. So this is what 3rd density is basically all about. We're just here to make choices, these choices by our own free will. So the choices we make in this realm determine the path of our soul in the higher dimensions. And it makes a lot of sense if you've watched my previous videos. In 4th density, the positive and negative live on separate frequencies, but can and do interact with one another if they so wish. The same goes for 5th density and so on, but due to expanded perception and knowledge, this is usually uncommon. As I just mentioned, the negative path ends in 6th density due to the unification of souls. So the entity realizes that the illusion of the left-hand path or negative path is an illusion, and so it continues its path by flipping its polarity and moving towards oneness. Now, I don't like the terms good and evil, as all is one and both paths lead back to the creator. So just like in the Ra material, we'll use positive and negative, or right and left hand path, hence the electrical term polarity, which is positive and negative. And more specifically, I like the term moral polarity. So I'll cover how all this relates to the electrical universe, which is quite an interesting theory or model at the moment in the scientific realms. And that's going to be a very exciting episode. So basically up here you got good and evil, you got positive and negative on each end of the spectrum, much like electrical polarity. So moral polarity, as I said, I like to call it. So discuss this more. The term service to other is also one that I feel is a little too ambiguous, and so I prefer to use service to all, as this then includes the self, as we are one. If you were to do only service for others at the expense of the self, then this is a negative polarity and negative polarity act, and just as only serving the self at the expense of others is. So the same goes for actions of others. If you allow others to treat you negatively for their own gain and don't make it clear that this behaviour is just unacceptable, then that is also negative to the self, as you're allowing this by your own free will. So just like the electrical charge, we must make moral choices, positive or negative, in order to polarize to a certain percentage, 51% to the positive and 59% to the negative, to be able to ascend or move to the next dimension or density when the time comes for that ascension, or what's called harvest. So for the positive end of the spectrum, you only need to be a service to others slightly more than you are selfish, which is the 51% of the time. But for the negative, you must be extremely selfish, manipulative, controlling, create fear, cause separation, and so on, 95% of the time. So it's the majority of the time. Now this leads us to Ascension and Harvest, which I just mentioned. Ascension and Harvest, there is a personal or individual ascension where one has made the choice through its thoughts, actions, and so on toward the specific polarity at that percentage for that level. So I'll explain those percentages and what it takes to be ready for that next level. So there are, as I said, there's a collective level of ascension when the whole planet has made the choice of one specific orientation, one way or the other, and that's essentially what is going on here. The reason for the term harvest is an old religious term which denotes the watchers who are often termed as gardeners, in that they have been sowing the seeds, guiding our evolution in line with our own free will, our own choice, our own choosing, and we'll be able to harvest, and will be the guardians, the watchers, the gardeners will be able to harvest the crops when they're ready for the next phase. So they're essentially helping us, which in turn helps them at these higher dimensions, which I've mentioned previously in the last video. Now Ra says that Earth has come to the end of a cycle, a 75,000 year cycle of third density, which is split up into three 25,000 years cycles. They have cataclysms which end those cycles. It's all very cyclical, however. And you'll see throughout history, a lot of it is covered up, but there is evidence of humanity reaching these golden ages previously. Now, at the end of this 75,000 year third density cycle, which hasn't happened before, so the overall 75,000 year cycle hasn't been accomplished before though. Now there will be a three-way split. So there's those who've chosen the positive, and they'll remain on Earth for the fourth density incarnations. And then next you have those who've chosen the negative, who will begin incarnations on the fourth density negative on a planet that is of that vibration or frequency. Next, you have those who have not yet made the choice, who will incarnate on a new planet that is yet to have a third density cycle of spiritual evolution. And once they are harvestable, they will be able to choose to either return to Earth or continue incarnating to help those on this new planet to become harvestable, which is what's known as being a wanderer. Now, what a wanderer is a higher density entity that is chosen to incarnate in a lower density or third density specifically here to help the harvest, in which in turn helps those entities to evolve on those higher dimensions or densities. As I said in the previous video, we are multi-dimensional. We exist on multiple dimensions. So this part of me exists here and now, but I exist in other dimensions as a higher expanded consciousness, as we all do. Now, when wanderers incarnate in third density, they must go through the same veil of forgetting everyone else does, which is part of this limited human body or container that we currently experience, this construct of reality, this matrix, if you will. So we currently use this for the reason we use this is to maintain the illusion of choice, which is free will. So this body is a limited perception that can only receive certain information. So information's shut off. We can only perceive a certain amount. We're very limited in our expanded awareness. So we're a compressed awareness shoved into a container that has limited perception. So we've got a lot of information coming to us that we cannot even perceive. It all exists around us. There's lots of energy and things. Science, proves that we know through all kinds of scientific research, technology and instruments and things like that tell us that there is indeed multitudes, massive amounts of information, data, energy and things like that exist in what we call empty space. Quantum physics is very good with proving all this. So when you understand this and you realise that serving all is the only real choice in the higher dimensions, because there is only one of us here. So when your thoughts and actions in third density and negative, you're inviting more of the same. The opposite is also the same. So everyone essentially invites positive or negative entities or forces into their life by their own free will, thoughts, actions, and so on. And this can also carry over from past incarnations via karma. Now, harvest. So here we have an excerpt from the Law of One, or the Ra material. I think it would be, the questioner saying, which is Don, I think would be appropriate to discover how the Law of One acts in this transition of beings to our planet and the action of harvest. I am Ra. The Law of One states simply that all things are one, that all beings are one. There are certain behaviours and thought forms consonant with the understanding and practice of this law. Those who, finishing a cycle of experience, demonstrate various grades of distortion of that understanding of thought and action will be separated by their own choice into the vibratory distortion most comfortable to their mind-body-spirit complex, which is the individual. This process is guarded or watched by those nurturing beings who, being very close to the Law of One in their distortions, nevertheless have the distortion towards active service. Thus, the illusion is created of light, or more properly, but less understandably, light love. This is in varying degrees of intensity. The spirit complex of each harvested entity moves along the line of light until the light grows too glaring, at which time the entity stops. This entity may have barely reached third density, or may be very, very close to the ending of third density, light love, distortion, vibratory complex. Nevertheless, those who fall within this octave of intensifying light love then experience a major cycle during which the opportunities are many for the discovery of distortions which are inherent in each entity, and therefore the lessening of these distortions. So Ra are saying the entity's polarization reaches a certain point where the light becomes too intense, and that point is where their native octave will be, whether it's in third or fourth and so on. It's just how the process works. So, it's the native octave. So when you pass over, death isn't what we think it is. It's, you moved to a transition stage, and you go through that beam of light, that the light that he talks about there, that they talk about there, and you move through it until it becomes too intense. At that point, that's where you stop, and you move across to that native octave, whatever it is. And that's essentially the process of how harvest works, or ascension, as it's sometimes called. Now, reincarnation, Ra says some incarnate automatically, that is, without any conscious self-awareness of the process of spiritual evolution. They are under the guardians or beings whom you may call angelic. When the entity becomes aware of the mechanism for spiritual evolution, it will arrange and place those entities and lessons necessary for maximum growth and expression of polarity in the incarnative experience before the forgetting occurs. So this includes the choice of parents, and the veil of forgetting is in place so that there is learning to be had. As Ra says, it's like a game of cards. If you knew what cards would be dealt, then there would be no game. There's no scope for learning for the creator to further know itself. So this is the reason why that veil of forgetting is absolutely necessary. It just doesn't work. They've tried it before, and there's just very little progress. You know, when you know exactly what's happening and you know what's going to happen, there's very little motivation. And with Psychology 101, we know that you move away from negative things more than you move towards positive things. So there's more catalyst with the negative. Now, this leads us into spiritual evolution. I covered that in depth in the last video, so this will make sense if you've seen it. Now, the questioner Don says, the way I understand the process of evolution of a planetary population is that a population has a certain amount of time to progress. This is generally divided into 3 25,000 year cycles, as I mentioned. At the end of 75,000 years, the planet progresses itself. So Gaia, the Earth, progresses as well at the end of that cycle. What caused this situation to come about? Preciseness of the years, 25,000 years, etc. What set this up to begin with? I am Ra. Visualize, if you will, the particular energy which outward flowing and inward coagulating form the tiny realm of the creation governed by your council of Saturn. Continue seeing the rhythm of this process. The living flow creates a rhythm which is as inevitable as one of your timepieces. Each of your planetary entities began the first cycle when the energy nexus was able in that environment to support such mind-body experiences. Thus, each of your planetary entities is on a different cyclical schedule, as you might call it. The timing of these cycles is a measurement equal to a portion of intelligent energy. This intelligent energy offers a type of clock. The cycle moves as precisely as the clock strikes your hour. Thus, the gateway from intelligent energy to intelligent infinity opens regardless of circumstances on the striking of the hour. Is there a clock-like face, shall I say, associated with the entire major galaxy of many billions of stars, so that it revolves? It carries all of these stars and planetary systems through transitions from density to density. Is that how it works? I am Ra. You are perceptive. You may see a three-dimensional clock face or spiral of endlessness, which is planned by the Logos for this purpose. So, as I said, I've explained this process in the previous episodes, so watch them if you have not yet. It makes a lot of sense. So, the light spiraling up, expanding out, becoming greater and greater, that is essentially how light works on the micro, is how the galaxies work, how spiritual evolution and everything works on the macro scale. As above, so below, as within, so without. Ra says, your planet is third density in the beingness of its people, but the planet is now in a fourth density space-time continuum. So Earth is, and this was, remember, taken from the book, and the book was created 30 years ago, or the channelings were conducted 37 years ago, sorry. So humanity is moving closer and closer to this inevitable Earth evolution. So how does a third density planet become a fourth density planet? I am Ra. This will be the last full question. The fourth density is, as we have said, as regularized in its approach as the striking of a clock upon the hour. The space-time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into a space-time of a different vibrational configuration. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new distortions. However, the thought forms of your people during this transition period are such that the mind-body-spirit complexes of both individual and societies are scattered throughout the spectrum. Instead of being able to grasp the needle and, shall we say, point the compass in one direction together, essentially. So this is why we often hear that we're consciousness with schizophrenia, because we're very much all over the place. We're being flooded with so much misinformation coming in from the media and through society, through people we meet who are again brainwashed by this rubbish, these agendas that are being pushed upon us. Anyway, back to the excerpt. Thus, the entry into the vibration of love, sometimes called by your people the vibration of understanding, is not effective with the present societal complex. Thus, the harvest shall be such that many will repeat the third density cycle. The energies of your wanderers, your teachers, and your adepts at this time are all bent on increasing the harvest. However, there are few to harvest. This leads us into wanderers. How many of them incarnate on Earth now? I am Ra. The number is approximate due to a heavy influx of those birthed at this time, due to an intensive need to lighten the planetary vibration and thus aid in this harvest. The number approaches 65 million. Again, take note that this material was conducted 37 to 38 years ago, and the amount of wanderers now are believed to be closer to 100 million. So therefore, many of those awakened now are wanderers who are not included in what Ra speaks of as this small amount of harvestable entities, as the wanderers come from higher dimensions already, and they can return to those native dimensions once they either die or the harvest happens. Now, death, as we know, is not what we think it is, not what the majority of people think it is, and have been led to believe through, garbage, I believe. But discern for yourself what death is, but to me, it's a transformation. Energy doesn't die. We know that. It just transfers from one medium to another, and that's exactly what we are. We're energy contained within this body, and it moves on to another dimension when we die. We can choose to come back into this dimension as much as we want, and so on. Now, what does Ra say? Okay, questioner Don says, upon our physical death, as we call it, from this particular density and this particular incarnative experience, we lose this chemical body. Immediately after the loss of this chemical body, do we maintain a type of body? A different type of body? Is there still a mind-body-spirit complex at that point? I am Ra. This is correct. The mind-body-spirit complex is quite intact. The physical body complex you now associate with the term body being but manifestation of a more dense and intelligently informed and powerful body complex. Is there any loss to the mind or spirit after this transition, which we call death, or any impairment of either because of the loss of chemical body that we have now? I am Ra. In your terms, there is a great loss of mind complex due to the fact that much of the activity of a mental nature of which you are aware during the experience of this space-time continuum is as much a surface illusion as is the chemical body complex. In other terms, nothing whatever of importance is lost. The character, or shall we say pure distillation of emotions, biases or distortions and wisdoms of you will becoming obvious for the first time, shall we say, these pure emotions and wisdoms and biases, distortions, being for the most part either ignored or underestimated during physical life experience. So nothing of importance is lost. It's this mental processes that we have now. It doesn't exist like that in the other realms. So it doesn't continue. We only have these mental processes here to help us process the physical 3D reality. We don't need it. It doesn't serve us in those other realms, therefore that falls away. And all the important stuff, all that makes us, our character, our emotions, our wisdom, and all that carries on. So we are essentially all that and more in the next realm, because we remember all those past lives. We remember we're an expanded consciousness. We are more than just this one specific moment in time, this blip that this life is, or was, soon to be was. So, do we need to die to ascend? This is a common question that most spiritual seekers want to know. So Don asks, now these entities incarnate into a third density vibratory body. I'm trying to understand how this transition takes place from third to fourth density. I will take the example of one of these entities of which we are speaking, who is now in a third density body. He will grow older, and then it will be necessary for he to die from the third density physical body and reincarnate in a fourth density body for that transition. I am Ra. These entities are those incarnating with what you may call a double body in activation. It will be noted that these entities, birthing these fourth density entities, experience a great feeling of, shall we say, the connection and the use of spiritual energies during pregnancy. This is due to the necessity for manifesting the double body. This transitional body is one which will be, shall we say, able to appreciate fourth density vibratory complexes as the instreaming increases without the accompanying disruption of the third density body. If a third density entity were, shall we say, electrically aware of fourth density in full, the third density electrical fields would fail due to incompatibility. To answer your query about death, those entities will die according to the third density necessities. So yes, we die, but not as you may perceive, as some do perceive. So, creation. Thank you. Can you tell me of the earliest first known thing in the creation? I am Ra. The first thing in the creation is infinity. The infinity is creation. From this infinity, then, must have come what we experience as creation. What was the next step, or the next evolvement? I am Ra. Infinity became aware. This was the next step. After this, what happened? Awareness led to the focus of infinity into infinite energy. You have called this by various vibrational sound complexes, the most common to your ears being logos, or love. The creator is the focusing of infinity as an aware or conscious principle, called by us as closely as we can create understanding, learning, in your language, intelligent infinity. Can you state the next step? The next step is still at this space-time nexus in your illusion, achieving its progression as you may see it in your illusion. The next step is an infinite reaction to the creative principle, following the law of one, in one of its primal distortions, freedom of will, free will. Thus, many dimensions, infinite in number, are possible. The energy moves from the intelligent infinity due first to the outpouring of randomized creative force. This then creating patterns which, in holographic style, appear as the entire creation, no matter which direction or energy is explored. These patterns of energy begin to then regularize their own local, shall we say, rhythms and fields of energy, thus creating dimensions and universes. Take note, universes and holographic, in that the micro reflects the macro and so on, and vice versa, I should say, which leads us into the holographic universe. So Don asks, was the galaxy that we are in created by the infinite intelligence, or was it created by a portion of the individualized infinite intelligence? I am Ra. The galaxy and all other things of material of which you are aware are products of individualized portions of intelligent infinity. As each exploration began, it in turn found its focus and became a co-creator. Using intelligent infinity, each portion created a universe and allowing the rhythms of free choice to flow. Playing with the infinite spectrum of possibilities, each individualized portion channeled the love light into what you might call intelligent energy. thus creating the so-called natural laws of any particular universe. Now, I'll explain this in great detail about the logos and sublogoi, so in the last video, so this is all making sense. Each universe in turn individualized to a focus, becoming in turn co-creator and allowing further diversity, thus creating further intelligent energies, regularizing or causing natural laws to appear in the vibrational patterns of what you would call a solar system. Thus, each solar system has its own, shall we say, local coordinate system of illusory natural laws. It shall be understood that any portion, no matter how small, of any density or illusory pattern contains, as in an holographic picture, the one creator, which is infinity. Thus all begins and ends in mystery. So it's saying within every atom is the infinite. It's a hologram of the whole, the sum of the whole. So this is how the illusory nature of everything is created. And this is where I'll end this, because it's a perfect segue into the next episode, which is the holographic universe. I've only just touched on the complexity of information that's contained within the raw material, as there's 5 books, which is very comprehensive, very scientific, and has a great vast array of material, because Don, the questioner, invoked all this material to come out of Ra. But I've given you a detailed look into the creation and its oneness, reincarnation, and how we all progress through the evolution of consciousness on an individual level as well as on a collective level. So these are the main philosophical teachings of the Law of One. And I will cover the other more transient topics as Ra terms it, such as UFOs, ET contact, chakras, and more practical. I'll also cover practical exercises to aid you in your personal evolution in later episodes. But yeah, the next episode will be the holographic universe, which is quite a fantastic concept and scientific model. So please check out the links below this video and how you can get much more information from me. Also, there's plenty of other material for further research into these topics. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, comment and share if you enjoyed it. Share the love, pass it around. I leave you in love. I leave you, friends, in the glory and love and light of the one infinite creator. Go forth then, rejoicing in the power and peace of the one infinite creator, Adonai. Love and light to you all. Namaste, and thanks for watching.